Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a feat of pure tactical engineering that completely flipped the landscape of modern football. We are breaking down the legendary 2003 to 2004 Arsenal team, a squad that achieved a level of absolute perfection we hadn't seen in over a century of top-flight English football, and honestly haven't seen since. Which brings us right to the staggering question. How exactly do you survive 38 grueling Premier League games without a single defeat? It's so easy to look back now and think it was just magic, or that they simply had the absolute best players on the pitch. But as you'll see today, this wasn't magic. It was a perfectly engineered, highly calibrated tactical machine.
Okay, let's dive into this. 26 wins, 12 draws, 0 losses. That is 90 points, scoring 73 goals while conceding a mere 26. Today, we're going to demystify exactly how manager Arsène Wenger masterminded this flawless league record.
To do that, we're going to dismantle the greatest team in Premier League history piece by piece. We'll kick things off with the unbeatable blueprint, move on to building the defensive bedrock, unpack their seize and carry midfield, map out the asymmetrical attacking web, see how they went about perfecting the counterattack, and wrap up with a legacy of tactical genius. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Unbeatable Blueprint, Re-engineering English Football. Before that legendary season even kicked off, Arsène Wenger already saw the design for an unbeaten run perfectly clear in his mind.
In fact, back in 2002, Wenger made this exact statement to the press, and man, the British media absolutely ridiculed him for it. They thought he was out of his mind. But Wenger wasn't being arrogant at all. He was simply looking at the revolutionary tactical engine he was quietly building behind the scenes, piece by piece, and he knew exactly what this squad was capable of. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Wenger took the traditional, rigid English 4-4-2 setup, which basically dominated the Premier League at the time, and tweaked it into this fluid, asymmetrical 4-2-3-1 structure. By giving specific players the green light to drop deep while pushing others high, Arsenal created these wild numerical overloads all over the pitch. It completely confused markers and ripped traditional defenses right out of their comfort zones. All right, let's move to Section 2, building the defensive bedrock, the foundation of the machine. Look, you don't concede only 26 goals in a 38-game season without an incredibly stable foundation. Just think about their specific center-back pairing. Campbell was a known quantity, right? Vast frame, strong as a literal ox, and completely dominant in the air. But he needed the right partner. Enter Kolo Touré. Wenger converted Touré, who originally played as a midfielder, and cost them a mere £150,000. Touré brought blistering pace and unbelievable athletic recovery. Their differing strengths complemented each other flawlessly, creating an absolute brick wall at the back. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about the personnel, it was how they actually played the game. Arsenal aggressively squeezed the pitch using a high defensive line and a highly coordinated offside trap. Because they played so high up, they desperately needed a goalkeeper who could act almost as an extra defender. Jens Lehmann was exactly that for them. He was a commanding sweeper keeper who'd just rush out and mop up any balls played over the top of Campbell and Touré. Which brings us nicely to Section 3, seize and carry midfield, the engine room. So the crucial point is that the midfield was the absolute beating heart of the Arsenal machine. And their style? It was incredibly pragmatic. We actually need to actively dispel a pretty big myth here. The idea that Arsenal just played pretty possession for the sake of possession football. No way. Their philosophy in the middle of the park was seize and carry. This literally meant crushing opponents in the midfield to strip them of time and space, seizing the initiative, and then rapidly carrying the ball forward before the opponent even had a chance to set their defense. So the midfield had 3 core functions. 1. Win those physical duels in the center. 2. Crush the opponent's advance to dictate the flow of the game. And 3. Carry the ball forward immediately. By executing this over and over, Arsenal completely stripped their opponents of the very right to progress up the pitch. And this whole system relied entirely on highly specialized partnership. Patrick Vieira was the dominator. He was the brain and the heart, winning the ball and surging forward with just terrifying power. But if Vieira moved forward, that obviously left a gap. That's exactly where Gilberto Silva came in. He was the stabilizer. He provided this invisible order, plugging the gaps and ensuring total safety at the back so the team wouldn't just break on the counter if they happened to lose the ball. Next up, Section 4, the asymmetrical attacking web, unleashing the weapons. This is the part where the tactical engine truly fired on all cylinders and just entertained the masses. The forward line was totally defined by these two legends, who moved in completely opposite directions. Dennis Bergkamp would drop deep into the hole between the midfield and the attack, acting as the ultimate orchestrator. Meanwhile, Thierry Henry would drift all the way out to the left flank. This dual movement utterly scrambled opposing center backs. If a defender followed Bergkamp, boom, massive gap in the center. If they stayed back, Bergkamp had all the time in the world to pick a killer pass, while Henry used his extreme speed to isolate and absolutely destroy defenders out wide. That dynamic right there is what led to Henry's astonishing 30 league goals. But we absolutely cannot ignore the wide players here. Robert Pirès, who casually scored 14 goals himself, and Freddie Ljungberg weren't just luxury attackers hanging out up front. They were vital cogs who relentlessly tracked back to defend. They were fully expected to fight for the ball and protect their fullbacks, Ashley Cole and Lauren. That unbelievable work rate meant Arsenal always had numbers in defense. Which seamlessly leads us into Section 5, perfecting the counterattack, seize and destroy. Let's bring all these anatomical parts together to see how this machine actually struck its targets. And this brilliantly illustrates how their defensive commitment actually made them a drastically better attacking team. Step 1. They'd absorb pressure in a compact block, almost inviting the opponent forward. Step 2. Vieira and Gilberto would force an error and snatch the ball back centrally. Step 3. Explosion. They would explode vertically. Because players like Pirès and Ljungberg had tracked all the way back, they were perfectly positioned to launch these lethal, lightning-fast strikes up the pitch the exact second the ball was won. I mean, once that counterattack was triggered, it induced sheer terror. As one of our sources notes, everything Henry did was fast. It was as if he could do and see things twice as quickly as everyone else around him. Whether he was running, passing, or shooting, the sheer vertical speed of this Arsenal team meant that by the time the opponent even realized they'd lost the ball, Henry was already putting it in the back of the net. Finally, Section 6, a legacy of tactical genius, beyond the Invincibles. Let's look at the ultimate climax of this machine and what it actually meant for the sport. 49. Just let that massive number sink in for a second. It completely cements the scale of their achievement. This invincible run didn't just stop at the end of the 2003 to 2004 season. No. They carried this momentum across 2 seasons, remaining unbeaten for an incredible 49 consecutive league games. So, how did this historic run finally wrap up? Well, in May 2004, they locked in the 38-game unbeaten season. The 49-game streak eventually ended in October 2004 against their bitter rivals Manchester United at Old Trafford. You might know it as the infamous Battle of the Buffet or Pizzagate, where tempers famously boiled over in the tunnel. But Arsenal bounced right back to defeat Manchester United in the FA Cup final in May 2005. Honestly, regardless of how the streak ended, their tactical legacy was already immortalized in history. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. Did Arsene Wenger's tactical machine actually perfect the Premier League, or did it simply force everyone else to evolve? The arrival of managers like Jose Mourinho and Rafael Benitez shortly after proved that English football had to adapt rapidly just to survive the blueprint Wenger had laid down. It's definitely a fascinating question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you enjoyed dissecting the Invincibles as much as I did. See you next time.